Hello and welcome to part 6 of my React Native Firebase series. In the previous videos, we talked about things like how to add data to a database, and we talked about how to authenticate the users. In this video, we're going to talk about how to actually store images with our food data in Firebase. So we're going to use the Firebase storage API in this video. So let's look at our package.json. I've added the UUID package here. Let's look at the docs for that now. So if we go to our docs here, this is the node UUID package. It generates a RFC UUID, which is just a unique ID for your app. So if you go down here, you just install UUID and it walks you through here. It's pretty easy. We're just going to use this package to create a unique ID for our images, for the file name for our images. So let's go back to our app here. In the iOS folder here, I also added the Firebase storage pod here. And then you go to your iOS folder and you run pod install, and that should be it. So another thing I did before this video is I added a screen here to show some text if we don't have any foods. And it says to press this button if you want to add a new food. And then here's the code for that. I just said if the length is less than 0, or if it's greater than 0, then we show our flat list. If it's not, then we show this block of text here. And then I added the action button to a separate function here. Pretty simple stuff. And also in our package.json here, I added the React Native image picker library. So let's look at the docs for that. So this is a very popular way to let the user select an image from their device or by taking a picture with the camera on their device. So it's updated pretty regularly here. And if you go down here, you can see how it will look in your app. For me, I did npm install React Native image picker. And then you just go down here and you follow the directions, and we'll add this to our app pretty fast here. So let's go back to our app. And the first thing I want to do is go to our UI folder here and create a new file and call it curry image picker.js. So the first thing we're going to do is add our import. So let's do import React from React. Then I'm going to import some components from our React Native library. So I'm going to do view, I'm going to have a button, image, and we're going to have a style sheet. Okay, so let's put these on a different line and do from React Native. And then we want to actually import the image picker from the library. So we do import image picker from React Native image from. Okay, so now we're going to create a stateless component. So we're going to do constant curry image picker. I want to pass in some named variables here. So I'm going to say image, and I'm going to pass in a callback. So it's going to be something like on image picked. I think that's a good name. And then we're going to have a block of code here. So we're going to first do our return statement. So return a view, and then we're going to add another view for the container for our image. So we're going to do view, I'm going to say image, and then we're going to have source, and the source we will come back to in a minute. So let's now have another view container here. So we're going to have view. For this one, I'm going to have a button, and for this button, I'm going to say title, and we're going to say pick image. We're going to have an on press here, on press. We're going to call it pick image handler, and we'll create this function soon. Okay, so now let's actually create some styles. So we're gonna have our constant styles equals style sheet dot create, and then we're gonna have a container first. And for this container, it's gonna take up the entire width, and then we're gonna have align the items in the center. Okay, and then we're gonna have another style. I'm gonna call it image container, and this one will have a border. So I'm going to create a border width first, and it's going to be 1, and we're going to have a border color black. And then we're going to have a width. I'm going to have the width be something like 80% because I don't want it to take up the entire width of the screen. So let's do 80. And I'm going to have a height of the image that we want to show as maybe something like 150, 160. And then for the button, I want to create a button with a certain margin around it. I'm gonna have margin maybe 8 for now. So let's go back up here to our return block, and I want to put this style on this view here. So we're gonna have style, and this one is gonna be the button. So it's gonna be styles.button. And for this top style, I want it to be style equals styles.container. And for this style, I want it to be image container. Okay, so let's save this. And now let's create our function for our button. So pick image handler. So we're gonna go down here and create our function up here. So let's go like this. And we're going to use this image pick class here. So if we look at the docs here, you can see that we do image pick.show image picker, and we have some options here and our response. So let's go back to our app here, and we're going to do image picker.show image picker. And then we want to pass in a few different options. So the options here, they don't really show you how to define the options, but I've done this a lot before, so I'm going to just walk you through it. So for options, there's an object that you send to it. You have access to different variables here. So for the first one, we're gonna show a title. So we're gonna have title, and the title is gonna be pick an image. And then we're gonna have a max width. So there's max width and max height for this. So for max width, we are going to set it to something like 800, and max height, we are going to show it as 600. I think that would be good. Okay, and now our options are defined. So let's now add in our actual callback. So we're going to use the response that we get back from the image picker, and then we're going to use that, and we're going to say if response dot error. So error is part of this package here, image picker response dot error. So dot error. Then we just want to say console.log. Let's do image error. Okay. Else we want to do a console.log. I'm going to say image, and then maybe something like response. And then from the response, we can get a URI. And then with this URI, I want to invoke this callback that we haven't defined yet, but I want to say one image picked. And then I want to pass in the URI that we get. So I want to have a field called URI, and I'm going to pass in the response.URI. So this will go back to any component that wants to know when we picked an image. Okay, so we're using a stateless component, but I actually want to have a little bit of state in this class because I want to know what image that we selected, and I want to be able to set that state. So I'm going to use something that I talked about in a previous video on this channel. I'm going to use a hook. I'm going to import the useState hook from React. So if you don't know about hooks, I encourage you to look at my video that I did recently on using hooks in React Native. So let's go back down here to our function, and I'm going to create our hook for our state. I'm going to say constant, and I'm going to say selected image, and then we're going to have a function to set that. So I'm going to call it set selected image, and then equals use state. And we're not going to define any default values here. Okay, so inside of our image pick handler here, I'm going to set that. So I'm going to do set selected image, and then I'm going to pass in the URI here too. Response.URI. So we're setting the local state of the selected image, and we're also invoking the callback for any component that wants to know about the selected image. So we will see why we created this state in a little bit, but let's save this for now. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go to our food form here, and I want to actually import our curry picker. So let's go import curry image picker UI curry image picker. And now I want to add this image picker at the top of the screen here. So like if we go to our plus here, I want to have the image picker at the top. So we're going to put it above our name input. And if you remember, we are actually taking in a couple of different props here. So if you go to our image picker, you can see that we have image and on image picked. So let's go back here to our food form, and we're going to define image. So we don't have this defined yet in our food objects, but we're going to say that image is equal to props.food And then we're gonna have another field that we don't have yet called image. Okay? And now for our on image picked, make sure that these names are correct if you are using named props here or named inputs here. And on image picked is going to be equal to a function that we don't have yet called set food image. We'll fix this error in a second, but let's go back up here to our food form at the top here, and let's add in our set food image. And for set food image, we're gonna have an image input. And for the image input, we are going to set the prop of a field in the formic form. Let's go down here to our formic component, and we are going to add a new field here. We're going to add, so we have name category. Let's put this on a different line. I'm going to add a new field here called image URI, and this will be null for now. Okay, so let's go back up here to our function, and I'm going to set this image URI field. So I'm going to say props.set field value because it's part of our formic form, and it's going to be image URI, and then it's just going to be image.URI because the image is an object that has a URI field. Okay, I hope this all makes sense so far. There's a few different pieces that are coming together, and you'll see how it all fits together towards the end of the video. So let's look at our curry image picker again. We're passing in the image on image picked, and the reason why we get this error is because we have nothing in our source here, so let's fix that. For our source here, we want to have the actual selected image. So we're going to copy and paste this here. So the reason why we are doing this is because we want to show a food image if we already have a food for our form. So if you click on a food in the food list and you go to edit the food, we want to show the food image if it already exists. There's one more thing that we need to actually make that work. We need to add another hook to our stateless component here. We want to add the useEffect hook. So for the useEffect hook, I want to add a hook to show the image or to set the image state when the component first loads. So I'm going to say useEffect, and we're going to say if image, so image is the image that we're passing to this curry image picker. If image, then we want to just console.log useEffect, and we're going to pass in the image here, just to do some debugging. And then we're going to set the state of the image using set selected image, and we're going to say URI and image. And then we need to add in our missing parentheses here. So I mentioned something in the video on hooks with useEffect. This will get called on every update, which you don't want that to happen. You want it to get called once. So for our case, we want it to get called only when the image prop changes. So at first it might be null, and then we actually pass in the image. So we only want this to get executed when the image is set. So we're gonna pass in this argument here and just say image. So this will only happen probably initially, and then it'll get called again when the image is actually set. So let's save this, and we need to export our curry image picker. So let's export curry image picker, export default. Let's save. Let's go to our food form here. And as you can see, we have our bordered image picker here. So let's add something to this to make it a little bit easier to see. Let's add a background here. So let's do background color. I'm going to do something like a light gray-ish color. I'm going to say hashtag 3Es. And now you can see it's a lighter gray color here. So now let's test this out as we have it now and pick an image. So let's do like this. And as you can see, it says choose from library or take photo. In the simulator here, I cannot take a photo, but I did this on my phone and it works fine too. So I'm going to say choose from library. And we have our library photos here from the default stock images. And I want to just choose something random. So let's choose this one. And as you can see, our image is not set. So let's figure out why that's not set here. So first, let's go down here to our styles. I want to add a style for the actual image. itself. So let's go, let's say preview image. And I want to set the width and height to 100%. So height will be 100% too. And then we're going to add the style to our image source. So let's do style equals styles.previewImage. And it should be styles. Save. Let's go back here, pick an image. And now, as you can see, our image is showing up here. So we can go back in again and we can pick another image and it'll be updated correctly. So that's our URI here. So we have our image picker working correctly. So now we will actually implement our upload method for our Firebase storage API. So let's go to Foods API class. So for the add food method here, I want to refactor this a little bit. I want to put this here first. And then instead of the snapshot.get, the first thing I want to do is set the food ID. So I want to say food.id. So this is a field that we create when we add the food. So food.id equals snapshot.id. So this is a document snapshot. Every document snapshot has an ID field by default. So we're taking that ID and we're putting it into the food.id. Remember that we're doing this so we have access to the ID later when we want to delete a food or update a food. After this line, I want to do snapshot.set. So this is similar to what we did in the update method where we set a food. So we do snapshot.set and then we say food. Okay, that's set now. So set doesn't actually return anything, so we want to get rid of this. So no more food data here. And instead of food data.data here, we just want to pass in the food itself. So I'm going to move the add food method down at the bottom here. And I want to create a new function. So export function. And I'm going to call this upload food. So this upload food method is going to be a way for us to upload our food image first, and then we're going to call this add food method after that is successful. And we're doing this because we want to have a reference to our food image from our food object. So instead of our upload food method here, I want to pass in a food object, and I also want to pass in a callback. So I'm going to say on food uploaded, and then I want to pass in a Boolean for our API here. So I'm going to pass in something called updating. Let's work on the body of this function. This is going to be a little bit of work here, but we'll walk through it step by step. So the first thing I wanted to do is I want to have a condition that says if food.image URI. So let's go back to our food form again. We're setting the food image URI here. So we're setting it in the curry image picker. If we pick a new food, this image URI field will be set. If we don't pick a new image, then it will be null. I'm doing this because I only want to upload an image if we have an image URI. If we don't have an image for this food, then I don't want to call the storage API for Firebase. And the same is also true if we're trying to edit a food without changing the image. So I don't want to upload the same image twice. So if we're trying to edit a food, like edit a food name, but not the image, I just want to upload the food without changing the image. So that's why I'm using this image URI flag in our food form here with formic. So this will make a little bit more sense in a little bit. So let's go back to our foods API. If we have a food.image URI field set for our local food object, then I want to actually create a file name for our food image first. So I'm going to say constant. So based on whatever file type you have here, so this could be a PNG, a JPEG, GIF, like whatever. So we want to have a constant. I'm going to say file extension. We're going to get that from the file name here. So we're going to say equals food.image URI. So the URI is in the log file here. So you can see it's some file name and then .jpeg in our case. .image URI. And then we want to split it on the period. So we want to do dot split on the period. So this will split this string here into this part and the JPEG part. And then we want to pop the last part of the array. So the split gives you an array of two fields here, this and JPEG. So pops the last part of the array, which is the JPEG here. If you want to be certain of that, you can log it. So we can do console.log file extension. I think I want to go back to, before we continue this, I want to go back to our food form here. And I actually want to refactor how we're doing our handle submit here. First, let's import our upload food method. And then we're going to go down here to our handle submit. So we have if props.foodID, then we're updating our food. If not, then we're adding a new food. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove these methods here. Let's comment it out for now. Instead of update food, I want to have upload food. Okay, so upload food takes in the food object, it takes in a callback, and it takes in the updating Boolean field here. So for this, we're passing in the same values, which is our food object. And then for this here, we have our callback here. So I'm going to pass in the same callback. So props.onFood updated. Remember, this is coming back from the food form screen, which is also coming back because of the food list screen. So it's a lot of passing around of different objects, but using a context and hooks in your app is a great way to prevent that from being the case. Actually, onFood updated is part of our food form screen. So onFood updated here. And we're passing that here, and then we go to our food form, and we're using that here as our callback. Okay, so we have our upload food here. And then we want to actually pass in the updating field. So we have to do updating, and we want to pass it in as a named parameter. So we do updating, and then we want to set it to true because we are updating the food in this condition here. Okay, so let's go down here and let's do something similar, but in this case, it'll be false. So there's one more thing that we want to do in this case when we're uploading our food and updating it. We want to add in a new field here. We want to say values.image equals props.food.image. And this is similar to the case up here. This is if we're updating a food that already has an image, then we want to put the image into this field here for the new food, because the image is not part of our form field. So that's why we're doing this. Our food object by default has only a name category and image URI, but if we are updating a food, then we want to pass in our same ID, created at, and image here. And we want to set that to our food here. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. There's different ways to do this, but I'm just showing you a very basic way of doing this. There's different ways to abstract this out to make this a little bit cleaner. So that's actually all we need to do for this. And I'm going to save and go back to our food API. And then I'm going to reload. So now I'm going to do a lot of testing as we continue our function here. So let's go here, and I'm going to do this and pick a random image. And pick it here and press submit. And this log file here is the extension. Let's do ext. Okay, so let's continue with this condition here. So now we want to actually create a unique name for our file. So I'm going to import the UUID package here. So import UUID, and it has to be a specific version for this. So I'm going to say 4. So if you go back to our docs here for this, you can see there's different versions. I'm going to stick with 4 here. So we have UUID 4, UUID/v4. So let's go back down here to our function again, and we're going to do var UUID. That'll be the name of it, and it'll be equal to UUID4. And then we want to do constant file name, I'm going to call it. And then we're going to create a string template here. So the backticks is how you do that. And then we're going to do $UUID, and then we're going to do dot file extension. Oops, sorry. That should be dot dollar file extension. Okay. Okay, so we're creating the format for our file name. It'll be some random string based on the package, and then it'll be the same file extension like JPEG or PNG, JPEG in our case, JPG. And we're going to log this for now to test it out. So console.log and file name. Save and reload. We're going to add a new image here, something random here, and let's do submit. And as you can see, we have our extension here and we have our file name. So UUID always generates a string in this format here. We can do it again just to be sure. So let's submit. And you can see it's creating a different string every time. So this ensures that we have a unique file name for each of our images and the storage database. Okay, so now let's get to the actual API part. We're going to do var storage ref. This will be a reference to our storage object, and it'll be equal to Firebase dot storage. And then there's a field called a ref, and this references the actual path. So we want to put in the path. You see here, path, a path to initialize the reference with. So we can create the path here first. For the path here, I'm going to do another string template. And I'm going to say foods.images / and then we're going to pass in our file name. It'll be $, and then file name. Okay, so now let's use our storage ref, and we're going to say storage ref dot put file is actually how you put the file from R in Firebase. So put file, and then we want to put the file food.image URI. This is why we created the URI here. So we're taking the URI that we have, which is our path to the file on our local machine, and we're putting that into the storage ref, and we're using the file name here that we create as the name on the Firebase server. And then we actually want to listen for a change in the event state. So there's a function called on. So on lets you listen in for changes to the task event. So .on. And now we want to do a listen for the state change. So if we look at our docs here for storage in React Native Firebase, let's go down here. There's different properties. There's state change. So state change is what we actually want to use here. And then for the task state, we have different states. We have running, paused, success, canceled, and error. We'll be using some of these in a state change. So let's go to our app here, and I'm going to listen in for a Firebase.storage.task event, and then the task event will be state changed. So be sure that you have this right. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Okay, so on, if we look at on again, it takes in the task event, which we defined here as state changed. And it also takes in a callback handler. We're going to define that callback handler now. And it returns the snapshot. So every time the state changes, we get a snapshot of the state. So snapshot, and then we want to, let's actually log these just to be sure that we know what we're getting. So let's do console.log, and I'm going to say snapshot. And then I'm going to log the snapshot. So instead of this snapshot, we have access to the state. So we just say snapshot.state. And now I actually want to log something else that we're not going to use, but I want to show you that you can use it if you want to. So we're going to do console.log, and we're going to say progress. So a lot of times in your app, you might want to have like a progress bar or something like that you want to use. We're just going to use this for the image for now, but you can use it for uploading documents too. So we're going to do progress, and we're going to say plus snapshot. This will be how we actually determine how much of a percentage that we have uploaded for our image. So snapshot dot bytes transferred. So We're gonna put this in parentheses. So bytes transferred divided by snapshot dot total bytes. So for example, if we have like 500 bytes divided by 100 total bytes, then we have 0.5. And then we want to times that. So we want to put another parentheses here, times it by 100 to get 50%. And let's put that here. So if we actually uploaded our image successfully, we want to just log that. So we want to do if snapshot.state equals firebase.storage.task.state.success. So it'll be all uppercase. If that was okay, then we actually just want to log the same thing. So we just want to log success and quotes. So this part that we just did is just for debugging purposes. It doesn't really do anything. But let's add in another block here. So we also have access to, if we go back up here, we have access to error. We're not going to see this or anything, but this is good to have in your app if you have an error for uploading for some reason. So we're going to have error, and then we are going to call a function that is built into this by default. So we want to call unsubscribe, and this is part of the upload task. And then we just can log image upload error. Okay, so that is just for an error. We're not using it or anything. Actually, let's use it here. You might want to do toString here. Okay, and for the last part here, this is actually what happens when we complete the task. So let's do a function callback here. So let's look at our on again. This is the actual handler for the put file method. We're going to do storage ref. And now we want to actually get the download URL that is available to us now. The storage ref has a function called get download URL. So it fetches the URL for this object. We're going to call this method .then, and then we have our download URL. I'm going to call it here. And we're going to have another log file here just for consistency. We're going to have console.log, and we're going to say file available at, and then we're going to have the download URL here plus download URL. Okay. I'm going to use this flag here that we defined. So we defined this flag here, updating. This flag is very important because if we are updating our food, we want to do something slightly different than when we are adding a food. So we're going to have a condition here. We're going to say if updating, then we want to log this again, just to be more thorough, console.log. And then I'm going to say updating, Okay. I want to call the update method now. So update food. And then if you remember in our update food, we are passing the food object and a callback. So update food, pass in the food, and then we're going to pass in the callback here. So on food uploaded. On food uploaded. So let's copy this line for now, and then we're going to have our else here. So else wanted to do, So else we want to do console.log, and then we want to say adding with a few dots. And then we're going to say add food. Okay, so we have add food, update food. We're passing in the same callback here, but the callback that you see here will be different for each of these. It'll be, let's go back to our food form here. And oh, good thing I caught that now. This should be on food added, not on food updated. Okay, so we're passing in two different callback functions here. So our API class doesn't know that, and it doesn't need to know that. It just needs to know that this will be called when we are updating the food and adding the food. That's something to keep in mind. These are two different functions. So there's another condition that we need to worry about here. We have the condition that if this is a food.image URI, so if we have a new image in our food object, then we do all this stuff. But what if we don't? So if we don't have a new food image, then we want to have an else here. And for the else here, I'm going to log this console.log skipping image upload. Okay, and then I want to have a condition similar to what we have up here. Actually, let's just copy and paste this block here. Okay, so let's walk through this really fast again. When we are uploading a food object to our database, we're passing in a food and we're passing in a callback to let us know that our food was either added or updated. And we're passing in a flag to let this API class know, or this API function know, if we are updating the object or adding an object. And then we have a condition here saying if the food has a new image that we need to upload to the database, we want to first pop the extension of the local file, and then we want to create a unique ID for the file name, and then we want to append the unique ID string to the file extension and use that as the file name for our file. And then we want to actually create a reference to a location in our storage bucket on Firebase to store our file. So it'll be under foods.images. Actually, it should be a slash. Good thing I went over this again. So it'll be under foods/images, and then the file name, the file will actually be stored here. And then the file name will actually be stored inside of the images folder here. So this creates a reference to that. And then we actually put the file using the image URI, and the image URI is the local location of our image. We put that file into the storage ref bucket on Firebase, and we listen for changes in the state. And as the state changes, we log the progress of the upload via this line. If we get an error, then we unsubscribe from listening. And after that is complete, we get the downloaded URL from the storage ref, and we log that here. And then we check first if we are updating, then we want to call back to our update food method here. And then if we are not updating, we are adding a new food, so we want to do add food. And I misspelled this, so let's make sure these names are correct. Let's go back up here on food uploaded. Okay, and same thing here. Okay, save. Okay, so these functions here haven't changed. We went over these in a previous video, so let's go down here. So this else block gets executed if we do not have a new image for our food. Then we just call update food and add food directly, like we did up here. So let's go back to our food form here, and we can get rid of these here for now. Okay, and now we can actually go ahead and test our uploading of our images. So let's reload the app. So let's add a new food. I'm going to add burger, cannot spell today, junk, and some random cheese here. First, let's try to add a food without an image. So let's press submit. We have our log here with our actual food object here. So we have category, image URI is null, as it should be because we did not upload an image. Our name, sub-ingredients. So we have skipping upload. So let's go to our API. So we have skipping image upload, which is what we expect. And then we have adding. Let's go to our database here. And now you can see that we have our food here. And you can see that we have our ID, which should be the same as our document ID. So there's something that you have noticed here. We have an image URI. So we have that because, let's go back to our food form, because we have that as part of our food object in our formic form. And we don't want to have that showing in our database, but we need it in our food API. So we need it because, let's go back to our upload food function. We're using it because we want to know if we need to skip the image upload or not. So at this point, we still need our image URI, but we can get rid of it before we actually upload our data. So here we're just uploading the image, which is fine. And here we are actually adding our food to the database. So I want to add one line here to this block of code. There's an easy way to actually delete a field from an object. I want to do it above the updating. So I want to say delete. Delete is a special keyword that you can use to actually delete a field. So I want to say delete food.image URI. So before we actually update or add a new food, I want to delete this field. So let's save. I'm going to reload this. I'm just going to say test 1 and then put in something random here and press submit. And now let's go to our document here. As you can see, it's still there, and that's because I forgot to put it in the correct part. So I want to put it in the else block here. Now let's actually just update this to make it disappear. So let's do test, submit. And you can see down here, we have updating food in Firebase, skipping image upload. So we can go back here. And as you can see now, that image URI is gone. So now the image URI will no longer be a part of our food object as we upload it. It'll only be locally in our formic food form. So let's go back to our code here. And we're doing it in both places. So we'll never have that image URI field, regardless of if we have an image or not. That's just a handy thing to know. So use this if you want to delete a field instead of an object. Very easy. Okay, so let's reload this. Now let's do a test with an image. So let's do pick image, and we're gonna choose from library. We're gonna pick a random image here, image test 1, and put in something random here. You can see our URI is here. I'm going to clear this first and press submit. So as you can see here, we can see our progress. So we have the running snapshot and we have success. So let's go back up here to our log, and you can see our file name is here, snapshot running. While it's running, we have the percentage of the upload for our image here. We have a success here. We actually want to display our images in our list here. And we also want to display our image in the detail screen here too. So that's pretty easy compared to what we just did. So first, let's go to our food list screen. In our list item here, our list item is part of the React Native Elements library. So React Native Elements list item, it also has a prop called left avatar. It has left and right. We are going to show a left avatar image here. So we're going to say size, and it's going to be either small, medium, large, X large. We're going to say large, and then we're going to have a rounded prop set to false, so it's going to be square. And then we want to set the source here. So the source is going to be either null or it's going to be a URI. So it's going to be set to an image. Item.image in our case. So as you can see here, the image is just a gray square here because we do not have an image loaded for this yet. So as you can see, something is wrong because our image is not showing up in the list view here. So we need to figure out why that's not showing up. So let's go to our Firestore database, and the name of the object is image test 1. So let's see what we have here. You can see we don't have any image field here. So that means that our image was uploaded, but it did not set the actual image field here for our food object. So as you can see, we don't have an image here showing, and this is a problem because we have an image that we uploaded. But if we go back to our Firestore database here, let's go to the image test. You can see that there's no image field here, which means that we didn't add it to our food object. So let's go back to our food API here. When we upload a new food image, we are then adding the food object to our database. But before that, we want to take this download URL, which we are not using, and we need to add it to a new field. So we're going to say food.image equals download URL. So we're storing the URL of the image in our food object under this image field name. So let's save, and let's go back to our app and reload. I'm going to do image test and then edit, and I'm going to pick a image here. And let's just pick a random one here. And now let's submit. You can see it's uploading here. Okay, it's updating. And we won't see it right away because we're not notifying the app that this has changed, but let's reload. So now let's go to our Firestore here, and you can see the image URL is here. So that's the first step. And it's not showing here, so now we need to figure out why it's not showing here. So let's go back to our food list screen. And the reason why is because it's coming from a URI in this case. So we need to do item.image, and this is a nice little trick. So you can do and the object URI item.image. So this is saying if the image exists, then we set it to the URI. The reason why you just can't do this here is because if this is null, then this will give you an error and your app will crash. But in this case, this is checking this first. If this is null, then this is already false. So your source can be null, but your URI cannot be null. Okay, so let's save. And now you can see our image is here. And it's loading from the URL that we get from the item.image. Okay, so the next step would be to show it in the detail screen here. And that's even easier. And the first thing we want to do is add an image to our imports here. And let's go down here. We want to add the image above the name here. So we're going to do image. We're going to add a style in a little bit, but I'm going to call it styles.image. And then we're going to have a source here. The source is going to be the food image source. We're going to say equals food.image URI food.image. Okay, so let's close this, save, and let's reload. Now let's go to our detail screen. And I want to create some styling for this now. So let's do image width 400, height 200, and save. And ta-da, we have our image here from the URL. The last thing I want to do is do a few tests just to make sure that things are working correctly. In our Firestore database here, we have our image. Now let's try to add a new image. Let's go edit, and I'm going to pick the flowers, the red flowers. And let's submit. So you can see it's not skipping the image upload because we have a new image, URI. And you won't be able to see it right away because we're not updating this list. So let's reload. And ta-da, now you can see the new images here. Okay, so now let's try to update something besides the image. Let's update the name and add some random thing here and press submit. And now you can see it skipped the image upload, updating food in Firebase. So we need to reload again. Now you can see image test 2. The image is still the same, and everything is working correctly. And this concludes the video of how you upload images with the Firestore Storage API or the Firebase Storage API. And I showed you how to actually display those images in the list here. And I showed you how to actually update a food item with an image and without an image. And I showed you how to change the image for a food item. And there's a lot more that you can do with the storage API in Firebase, but I wanted to show you the basics of it. So yeah, I hope this video was able to help you. And if you have any questions, please ask. I hope it wasn't too confusing. There's different ways to do this. If you put the Firebase code inside of your components, then you have access to more of the hooks and the context API that you don't have access to from this file. But I like keeping my API code separate from the rest of my code. Stay tuned for more videos in the future, and happy coding. Bye.